Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday. It is 3 p.m. ET, and you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. Yes, I know it's 3 o'clock. And yes, I know often we have shows at 4 o'clock. But we have such a special author today that I did not want you to miss her. We are talking to Sarah Pekkanen. So pull up a chair, get a glass of tea or lemonade or wine or whatever it is in your part of the world, and get ready for a wonderful conversation with one of my favorite authors of all time. I am Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 14 novels of suspense. My newest book is The House Guest, which you see so cleverly, casually displayed on the door behind me. And my upcoming book, look at this, it arrived today. This is my new book. This is the advanced copy of my new book, One Wrong Word. Isn't that fun? That comes out in February, and we will talk about that at some point. And so thank you for that. But today we are talking to Sarah Pekkanen, whose new book, Gone Tonight, is as mysterious and twisty and heartbreaking and poignant as anything I have ever read. It is surprising and unusual and really different. This is quite a spectacular novel. It's a thriller, and we'll try to talk about it. And I promise you we won't have any spoilers, and we'll do the best we can. So let me just read you. On the cover is Colleen Hoover. Okay, if Colleen Hoover loves it, that is pretty fabulous. What did you think, Sarah, when you saw Colleen Hoover?
I could not believe it. I mean, part of our job is that we do send out our books in advance of publication, and we ask other authors to endorse or to blurb them just as a way of, helping to get our books noticed by readers. And we always have the dream list of the authors. And we were talking about, for my newest, for Gone Tonight, and we said, well, what about Colleen Hoover? And that's like saying, what about, Harper Lee? Like, it's not going to happen, right?
We'll get Shakespeare for this.
Right. What about Shakespeare? So we threw up the pie in the sky wish, and I could not believe it when she came through with this amazing endorsement. I was so touched because she's a very busy woman, and by all accounts, very down to earth, very humble, and does what she can to help other authors. And it certainly helped me to have her name on the cover endorsing my book.
And it is such an interesting thing because as authors, we work just in such solitary conditions. And every day we're thinking, is this good? I wonder if I'm doing a good job here. Are people going to like it? And Colleen Hoover and all authors are not going to give you an endorsement of your novel unless it actually is good, because it would be harmful to them. I mean, her name is on your cover. When you think about that an endorsement means I like this book. What do you think about that?
It's so hugely flattering because it's not just, I like your book, but I took an entire day out of my busy life and schedule to read your book and to then come up with a thoughtful quote about it. We know how busy, everybody is these days, not just authors, but to have somebody like Colleen take that time, read it, send me the endorsement, I was blown away. And I think it is one of the best things about being a writer is that we don't feel like we're in competition with each other. People aren't just going to read one book a year or one book a month or one book in their lifetime. They get excited about reading. They want to find more books. And by recommending other authors, it only helps all of us in the industry. So that's one of the things I love. Like, Hank, you're doing these shows and you're bringing up different authors and introducing them to your fans and readers. And that's so generous. And I think, everybody helping each other spread the word about their books is a wonderful thing.
Well, there's nothing better than talking about books, and there's nothing better than finding a fabulous new book. And of course, Gone Tonight is absolutely one of them. I see, if I look over here, you all, I am looking at the comments. Nancy LeBeau Ash says, I just finished Sarah's book and my brain is reeling. And that is a good thing. That is a good thing. Shannon Hansen says, I'm excited to hear about this book. Jill is here from Minnesota. Shannon says, I've heard how popular Colleen Hoover is. I haven't read any of her books yet. Well, we are here to tell you you can start, but not right now, because right now we're talking to Sarah Pekkanen about Gone Tonight, and we will try to get Colleen Hoover here as well. So many questions coming in. Robin Stahl says, it's just wonderful when authors support each other. Yes, yes, yes. And it's also wonderful when readers support authors. And that is why, if you have not been to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze before, that is why this was started 3 or so years ago by the fabulous powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, to keep this happening, to keep us learning about new books and meeting new authors and talking to our favorite authors and maybe making some new favorite authors, and certainly finding out about wonderful new books. So that is exactly why we are here today. And don't let me forget you all. We are giving away, well, not we are, Sarah and her publisher are giving away a copy of Gone Tonight. As I say, not this one, because I am keeping this one. But if you leave a question or a comment or just general applause or adulation for Sarah and her book or her book in the comments, we will draw a random winner at the end, and you will get a copy of Sarah's book, which is absolutely great. Now, I'm going to keep talking for 10 more seconds, Sarah, because I just want people to know exactly who you are. And that is Sarah Pekkanen, is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, co-author, and co-author of 4 novels of suspense, including The Golden Couple and The Wife Between Us. You have all read both of those, haven't you? Of course you have. And the internationally and USA Today bestselling author of 8 solo novels. A former investigative journalist and award-winning feature writer, her work has been published in numerous national magazines and newspapers. She lives just outside of Washington, D.C. with her family and is moving into a new place. So I'm sure she's surrounded by boxes. So welcome, 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 welcome.
Thank you. And what a nice welcome. I'm looking through the comments too. Sherry Steuben, I loved your book. Thank you. It is lovely to see all the wonderful comments popping up, and so fun. And so, yeah, any questions you all have, we love answering them.
We'll take them. A couple of people, Shannon Hansen and Catherine Hollab, are asking about the cover. So let's go right to that. I just love the motion in this cover. Something is going, or something is coming, or something is changing. Was this the first cover, and what did you think of it?
Yeah, so as you guys know, authors don't choose their book covers. The publisher is the one who gets to pick the cover, and most authors, like me, have right of consultation, which means the publisher can ask us what we think, but in the end, they make the final decision. Of course, they want us to be happy, but they don't let us kind of go rogue and design our own covers. Things like that. So that was the first cover I saw. And my editor, the incredible Jen Enderlin at St. Martin's, said, I really wanted a stark cover. And it's, these curtains kind of billowing, maybe there's somebody's just climbed through a window and the breeze is billowing behind them as they leave, which in fact, it centers around a young woman who disappeared from her life. So that just seemed to kind of sum it up. When I saw it, I said, I love it. And that was it. It was that quick. It was just falling in love instantly.
And they're not going to make Sarah Pekkanen angry about the cover, just saying, but it is evocative and perfect, and has action and conflict involved in it, because clearly something is happening. So before we go any farther, tell us a little bit about this book, just basically the plot of the book, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what it's actually about.
Yeah, so Gone Tonight is a mother-daughter thriller. It's a story of Ruth, a 42-year-old waitress, and her grown daughter, Catherine, a 24-year-old recent graduate with a nursing degree, who have always been joined at the hip their entire life. It's only been the two of them. They're a family of 2. Ruth keeps in touch with no one from her past. She has a tracking device on her adult daughter's phone, and they often move with almost no notice, maybe a day's notice, and they're gone. And as Catherine gets ready to fly the nest, Ruth starts trying to bring her in closer. The question is, we know there's danger, but is the danger coming from Ruth, coming from Catherine, or coming from the outside?
It's so sinister. And I mean, it's interesting because there's a wonderful blurb from Alex Finley that I love as well. And he said, fresh, inventive, and with a gut punch you won't see coming. Believe the hype, he says. Gone Tonight is this decade's Gone Girl. And what do you think he means by this decade's Gone Girl and by the gut punch? Talk a little bit about that without giving anything away. Good luck with that.
Thank you for the challenge, Hank. I think like you, I don't want to save every twist and every jump and gut punch for the end, for the last chapter. I want them to be sprinkled throughout the book so that you're constantly going, oh my God, this happened and this happened. In The Wife Between Us, there was a huge gut punch, about 30% of the way through, maybe 35% of the way through. And I love doing things like that, like having things spin and twist around, and then you get another few chapters down and you're spun in a whole new direction.
It's so much fun to read that. And one of the things that I think, and I wonder how you feel about this, is we know your readers are smart. Renee Herskowitz just said, I didn't want to sleep once I started reading Gone Tonight. And Pamela says, I love scattered gut punches. Your readers are smart. And your readers are expecting something. After all, it's Sarah Pekkanen. They're expecting something and something and something. And you have to stay a couple of steps ahead of them. How top of mind is that to you when you write?
Well, first of all, Renee, thank you. That is so kind. I'm sorry for the sleepless night, but I'm actually hugely flattered. That's one of the best compliments. In terms of staying a step ahead, it is, as I've learned to write more, like you, Hank, I've just finished my 14th book, so we're pretty well matched here. And I initially used to kind of just like knowing the ending, and then I would sort of start writing and things would come to me as I wrote. But as I've gotten more into thrillers, because my first 8 books were more straight fiction, more about relationships and things like that, with some elements of tension. Now I'm writing, flat out thrillers. I tend to outline and write a synopsis. And the synopsis I used to hate doing, now I love it, even though I hate it, because it is so good for my writing. If I have a 4 or 5 page synopsis, I really know where I'm going, and I know where there are going to be those twisty moments that are going to be maybe anchoring every act. I can still add to it. I can layer, I can change it. I can throw out act 3 and redo it. But having that really gives me a good infrastructure when it comes to writing thrillers.
It's fascinating to read this. As a reader, I'm just totally immersed in it. You so seamlessly take us through this story that almost seems like it's not written, but it just exists. You were talking about the mother-daughter relationship, and it's the points of view from each of them. And we believe each of them when we're reading them. But my allegiance of who was telling the true truth, whatever that is, changed as I read the story, like every page. Was that fun to write?
It was so much fun. I loved having a mother and daughter who really knew so much about each other. They lived in the same small apartment with just a thin wall separating their rooms, actually be complete mysteries to each other in some way. And one of the ideas I wanted to explore was, mothers know their kids from the moment they're born, or maybe if they come into our lives later, we get to know them, but whatever it is, like their lives with us generally start at the beginning. But we mothers have lived a whole life before we've had kids. We've had a lot going on that our kids don't necessarily know about. They're not maybe super curious about until they become adults. They think we just kind of orbit around them, making sure they've had enough to eat and signing their homework thing and, yelling at them to clean up their rooms, whatever it is that we're doing. So I love the idea that this mom had this super complicated, rich, dark, twisty past, and her daughter just sees her as mom. And when she kind of starts to investigate and uncover her mom's background, she realizes there are sides to her I've never known and never suspected.
It was so fascinating to watch her sort of pick away at her mother's past and sort of irresistibly be drawn to find out what the truth was, because knowing that as a daughter, if you don't know the truth about your mother's past, you might feel, how do I really know myself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that as kids get a little bit older, they kind of go, oh, you did this, before you had kids, or you're interested in this, while you have kids. They do start to see us more as people. And yeah, having Catherine pick away at, as you put it, which I love, kind of just like forensically figure out her mother's life. Where did her mother come from? What was her mother hiding? Why is her mother hiding this? Who is her mother really? This woman she knows so well is a stranger in some ways. That was really fun to explore.
I remember when my mother, who I thought of exactly as you were talking about, if you are hearing noise from behind me, the people, can you hear that at all, you all? There's literally the guy in our next door yard is dumping gravel into his backyard right now. I just don't know why he would do that during crime time. I don't even know.
But my dog is about to start snoring behind me, so she'll grab out the gravel.
We're quite the team. We're quite the team. But I remember when my mother told me so well. I remember when my mother told me that she had gone to art school, and I just didn't know that. And I said, I remember thinking, she had a life before she knew me. And it was, I was maybe 15, and it was really a revelation to me. And then when you start thinking about all those possibilities of everything that might have happened, it's really quite amazing. And speaking of all the possibilities, we were talking earlier about gut punches and twists and stuff. I think that one of the things that you do so gorgeously in Gone Tonight, and your other books as well, is that they don't feel like twists. They feel like reveals. They feel like at some point, naturally, someone reveals to us something that we weren't aware of before, but that they knew. And it comes out very naturally. So it's not contrived. That's a skill. Well, what do you think about that?
Oh, well, I think thank you. That is a lovely thing to say. That is such a huge compliment. I'm laughing because I'm reading this comment from Pamela on the side about your gravel, who says, I cannot hear it. Maybe he's burying a body. Are you a thriller writer? Because you should be.
I know, we should go look. I could go turn the screen to say, what are you doing out there?
Really, I feel like we could write a book together around this thing. This would be perfect.
All of us.
But thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that we have to do as writers is it really, it starts with character and what is realistic and true for this character. Mm-hmm. We might think, our character would like to reveal this about themselves, would like to do this, but you have to be able to find a way to reconcile that with the character you're building. And if you can't, it might mean going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, actually, they went to boarding school when they were 15 and this happened and that's why this, but it has to be organic in a way so that it doesn't feel like I'm just going to plop in a twist and, turn things around, versus there's this part of the plot that's been kind of bubbling and brewing and maybe there are a couple of clues and here it is.
Because that makes their motivation realistic and understandable. And so and a reader might think, well, I might not do that, but I'm not her. And I see exactly why she would do that. And it really makes sense to me. And you're just so on her team, both of their teams.
And that's what I was hoping, that you can kind of root for them both, but your loyalty can shift between the two of them. You'll hear her part of the story and you'll think, oh, how could her mother or her daughter do that? And then you'll hear the other one's point of view and flip again and tell. And both women, I really wanted them both to be honest with the reader. They are not out there pretending to be anything other than what they are. Maybe they're not always giving all the information. Maybe they're parceling it out a little more slowly, but they are being honest with the reader, because one of the things I no longer want to do, I did with The Wife Between Us with my co-author, was to have an unreliable narrator. And I feel like that has been done in so many amazing ways by so many other authors that readers now kind of look for it. And readers are very smart. And if they get it early on, that's it. So I want to have more of the, as you so kindly put it, like the reveal, not the shocking, oh, they were, whatever it was. One of them was her and one of them from her before she died, and one of them is this.
The princess. We didn't know that. Yeah. And I do have, even in my notes, it says, I think they're reliable. They tell us what they want to tell. And they're super reliable. And I think that's even more of a plate spinning feat for you, to make them absolutely tell us the amount of truth they want to tell.
Yeah, and thank you. That definitely, I was hoping, and maybe you can tell me, Hank, because you read it that it didn't feel like they were holding back, like they were just revealing, the important stuff or whatever was appropriate for that chapter or that scene, but that they weren't deliberately holding back, or they did it. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. And I think readers and all of the readers who are here today, Nancy LeBeau-Ash is saying Hank is correct about the reveal. And Emily says, love Sarah's thrillers. Because I think that we can hear the falsity of something that's withheld as a contrivance. Because the writer is trying to create suspense. Yeah. And confusion is not the same as suspense. We know that it's being left out. And these women, Catherine and Ruth, are so natural about how they behave and what they say. So it feels as if we really know them. One thing that is sort of the umbrella over the whole story, though, and one of the worst villains that I've ever read about is Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's. I mean, talk about a serial killer, talk about something that we are all absolutely terrified and think about every day. You have introduced Alzheimer's as a character in this novel. And however you want to talk about that, tell us about why you decided to do that and how that's used.
That really started with something I was thinking about one day, about how women disappear. And this found its way into Ruth's dialogue and Ruth's or actually, I guess her inner monologue in the opening of one of the chapters. But I thought about, women disappear disproportionately at the hands of predators. Women slide into roles like motherhood or being a wife or whatever it is, and they lose themselves and their identity. Women are always encouraged to lose weight. You can never be too skinny. You got to shrink. You got to drop weight. You got to take up less physical space in this world. In school, young women are encouraged to speak more softly. So there are all these ways of kind of chipping away that women are disappearing. And then I thought, maybe one of the most frightening ways would be if a woman disappeared to herself, if her mind began to erase itself. And that's what led me to look into Alzheimer's as a partial setting for the book, because Catherine works in an Alzheimer's unit, and she is around people who have these glimmers showing what they were like before this terrible disease took over. And, there might be somebody who will hear a bird whistle and just replicate it note for note. There are moments of lucidity that are really beautiful. And I wanted to make sure I got the research right with it. And then I also treated every character with respect and showed that, these are full people. They're just beneath these layers of glycerin. You can't quite see, touch, feel who they really are, but it is still there at the core. And Catherine describes it as like it's the only place it can't touch is their soul.
And this is why I was saying, you all, that this book is so poignant and so heartbreaking. And think about what Sarah just said about beneath the glycerin and gone, when you think about it from the standpoint of Alzheimer's and what happens to a person, they're gone, and how terrifying a villain that is in real life. And you touched on your research, and you mentioned Lisa Genova in your novel, and in the acknowledgments or in the book, I forget. She's such a genius about this, and such a genius about forgetting and memory. And the book is really, I felt smarter about it after reading your book, even though it's not heavy-handed in any way. It's gracefully, gorgeously, as you say, respectfully put in. What was it like to write that? I can hear that you were just so careful about it.
Yeah, it was sad to talk to people who had family members who had gone through this. But writing about it, I was very curious about the disease. How does it start? How does it progress? How does it manifest differently in different individuals? And then having Catherine be a caretaker at an Alzheimer's memory ward, just learning different things like that. Maybe a blue towel on the floor might appear to be a pool of water to somebody who has Alzheimer's. That a pattern on a chair could look like a stain that this person might want to clean off. The way the mind works and changes and morphs with this terrible disease was interesting, to learn about, kind of the tricks that the brain would play on people and how these things were offset, how the caregivers would put in different shapes and different fabrics in the room to help residents understand the distinction between the couch and the chair and the rug, and just learning about the ways that people were battling back against it was pretty wonderful too.
And wonderful of you to reveal it to us, to let that be part of the story. Did writing that change how you view the world at all? Did you learn something about it?
I mean, I think with every book we learn stuff, right? We learn about ourselves. We learn about the outside world. I mean, why do we pick a certain book to write? There is an endless supply of ideas, even though we might have trouble thinking of one on any given day. But I mean, there are a million possibilities for our books to write. Why we each pick the 14 books that we've written. And, there's probably something that we're struggling to figure out. It may not be the exact thing in a book, but it could be like, you shuffle it through the kaleidoscope of fiction and sprinkle it onto the page, and it looks in a different way, but maybe it is the theme of loss, of whatever it is, a relationship ending. It could be anything. So when people ask that, it to me, that's kind of akin to where do you get your ideas? And I'm like, I wish I had that lightning bolt moment where the idea would come to me beautifully formed, but it's usually overhearing something, a conversation, reading something, that for Gone Tonight, it was that thought about women disappearing, like why is that sticking in my head? So, it can kind of come from anywhere and everywhere.
If you saw a funny look on my face, my screen just disappeared for some reason, and I could still hear you talking. So I thought, I know she's here. So that's why I was looking at the bottom of the screen. I sort of lost you, but I did hear Sarah. And I think that's such a good idea to think about where each of our total of 28 novels, which is kind of amazing, came from. And we probably could pinpoint that a little bit of the genesis of each one. Is anyone in your novel? Is anyone in Gone Tonight? We're talking about Gone Tonight by Sarah Pekkanen. Anyone based on a real person?
I used to say I never based a character on anybody in my life, partly because I do write thrillers. I have some pretty deranged characters. And partly just because it doesn't seem to work that way for me. I can take a little detail, something like that, like the beautiful necklace against a black sweater that you have. Like that might be something I'm subconsciously registering to bring up the next time I, need to describe somebody who's wearing something elegant. But it generally doesn't work that way. But Gone Tonight is the first time I have ever taken something from somebody I knew well and used it as a little bit of the basis for a character. And that is my paternal grandmother, who passed away while I was in college. But she dropped out of high school and worked as a waitress her whole life. My main character, Ruth, in Gone Tonight, dropped out of high school and worked as a waitress her whole life. My grandmother was incredibly smart, very ambitious for her kids. She knew she could not have the kind of life that perhaps she wanted or had dreamed of, but she did want that for her kids. She could slay you in Scrabble. She did the crossword puzzles in ink. I've often wondered if she might have wanted to be a writer secretly. But one of the things about her that I so admired, she was tough. She was like a tough little, like barely, 4'11" cookie. She was, a storybook grandma who made cookies, but also very tough. My dad was born with a heart defect, and he was born, in the 40s, and he was told that he would not live into his 20s. My grandmother, this high school dropout waitress, married to an immigrant who had not even graduated elementary school, found a surgeon, I believe it was in Boston, got my dad to the surgeon, convinced the surgeon to do one of the country's first open heart surgeries on my dad. And my dad is 84 today.
Wow. That is a breathtaking story. I'm just listening to you. My eyes are getting wider and wider and wider. And the people are saying, Beverly says, great. Emily says, great inspirations. Yes, that is an amazing story, and shows you how this comes right out of Gone Tonight, one of the things it shows is when you really want something, how far you'll go to get it, especially when you really want something for your child.
Mm-hmm. And how far would you go to protect your child? Ruth wrestles with that. She says, would you do the unthinkable? Would you do the unforgivable? Where is the line that you would go to protect your child? Would you kill for your child? Would you die for your child? You know, beyond that. So she really wrestles with all of that, and she makes some pretty big choices that are hard to understand, but they're, you know, I mean, parents will do just about anything for their kids.
I mean, I think I'll just disagree with you a tiny bit. I don't think they're hard to understand. And I think that's one of the powerful things about this novel is that we totally understand it. And we totally understand the love and passion and desire, even when someone might do what we might think is the wrong thing. It's for such a loving, right reason. And that juxtaposition is so great in your novel.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think that, you know, with characters, if we can understand them, we don't necessarily always have to like them. We don't always have to like what they do, but I think it is really important to be able to understand them and their choices. And that takes us back to the reveal rather than the shocker of a twist out of left field, where, you know, it all comes back to building the character, making them three-dimensional, really knowing them, knowing what they would do in any situation.
Yes, and it is, I see we're running out of time, and I'm just going to say finally, before we take the questions in 1 minute or 30 seconds, Judy Morris says, welcome, Sarah and Hank. Welcome to you, Judy Morris. God bless your dad. That's an amazing story, says Pamela Fry Priest. Amazing story. Wow, everybody, there's a lot. Pamela says, I just got chills up and down my body from your grandma's story. And yes, those kinds of stories are so valuable. And when you can take, as Sarah does, the essence of those stories and make them into new stories that help us understand the world and be more compassionate about it and keep us turning the pages as fast as we possibly can, like I did. It's amazing. This is absolutely a haunting, sinister, simmering novel, which I adored, and you all will too. I know you have questions for Sarah. Who has a question for Sarah? Maybe Joe in the back room can put up a couple. Thomas, hey Thomas, says, you are a new author, so would it be okay to start with this book, or would you suggest I start elsewhere?
Oh, thank you, Thomas. I would love it if you started with Gone Tonight. My first 8 books are more along the lines of like Taylor Jenkins Reid, Emily Giffin, Jen Weiner, so kind of more straightforward fiction. And Gone Tonight is my first solo thriller. So if you started with that, I would love to hear what you think.
Good idea. It is wonderful. It is a standalone, exactly. Catherine says, how do you decide what ideas to co-write versus solo?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I'm not sure it's so much based on the ideas. So Greer Hendricks and I wrote 4 books together and loved doing that. We had a contract. Our contract is done. And, you know, I am now writing solo books for the same publisher and editor. And who knows if we'll co-write something again someday, if we'll co-write with other people. It just, as authors, it's really fun to mix things up. You know, I feel like I love doing the women's fiction alone. I loved co-writing thrillers. Now I'm loving writing solo thrillers. But doing whatever feels right next creatively, I think is what drives me, rather than this idea would fit, you know, better in that category.
Yeah. And you just can't really make a rule about it. I think it's just sort of what appears at the moment, and you get goosebumps and the light bulb goes off in your head and you think, oh, this is going to work and I'm going to do it this way. Of course, you and I have to write our guy burying the guy in the gravel pit.
Totally.
In the yard. So we'll call it gravel pit, or the guy next door. We'll figure that out at some point. Who else has a question? How young were you when you knew you wanted to be a professional author? Great question, Renee.
Renee, first, I love your dogs. Oh my God, they're so cute. I was quite young. I pretty much knew all along. I used to write books like on, 3-ring binder paper, and I would send them out to publishers. I would like tie the edges with red yarn. I still have some. So it's pretty much what I always wanted to do, but I didn't know how to make a living as an author. So I went to school for journalism and became a journalist, like you, Hank, after college. But I did print reporting mostly. And then after having my first of 3 boys, I started trying to write a book. It took forever. It took every spare minute I had for 3 years because I'd had 2 kids under 2. They never slept. They never followed the rules of like napping. And so I wrote my first book in 3 years and it got rejected. Nobody in New York wanted it. No publishers wanted it. So then I wrote another one that took 2 years to get accepted. And that's when I really began.
It's so interesting to hear that you took 3 years to write a book. No one wanted it at that point. Who knows what would have happened to it right now? And so your reaction was to write another book. Where did that come from in you?
Part of it probably came from embarrassment because I had told everybody in the world, oh, I'm writing a book. Oh, I'm writing a novel. I got an agent. He's from New York, like I had just, put it out there that I was doing it. So then every time I went to the grocery store, people were like, where's the book? Where's it coming? And I'd be like, oh God. And I'd turn with my cart and my screaming children and run away. But no, it's that thing that you can't stop. When you're a writer and a novelist, it's really hard to stop. And I just could never stop. It was like an itch. It was, this kind of tug in the back of my mind that was always drawing me toward it. I don't really know how to describe it. It just felt like it would be harder to stop than to keep going.
That's great. We're glad you did. This is so marvelous that you have come out now with Gone Tonight, a haunting, marvelous, terrific, unputdownable novel. Clear your calendars, you all, because this is a book that you do not want to miss. Let's have Joe pick for a winner of someone who will win Gone Tonight. And meanwhile, while Joe is picking the winner from the back room, let me ask you, Sarah, to leave us with one last question. What is the best thing or one of the most wonderful things people have ever said to you, a reader has said to you about this book? It must be so life-changing for people or remind them of their own families somehow.
Yeah, I think when you really touch a reader, you connect with them on a very deep level. That, what you wrote moved them. And whether it's, I cried a little or I called my mom and I talked about this, whatever it is, just touching them in some way makes it so rewarding for us, as you know, Hank, like as authors, because we're writing our books alone. We're kind of in a vacuum. We're pecking away at the keyboard. We're thinking, is this any good? Is anybody going to read it? Is anybody going to like it? We doubt ourselves. We get obsessed by it. We're up in the middle of the night writing. We're excited. We're proud. We just go all over the place. And then it goes out into the world. And when you start hearing from readers and hearing their honest reactions that are so kind, like so many of these comments, it means everything.
Yeah, I agree. And these comments are marvelous. I hope you'll come back and click love on some of them as if you possibly have time to today. While Joe in the back room picks a winner, let me tell you quickly, you all, stay tuned because at 4:00 today, we will be talking to Alan Eskens about Saving Emma. And this is a very different kind of book from Gone Tonight. It's a mystery, a tightly plotted legal mystery. And it is so intriguing about faith and justice and love and protection and guilt. Saving Emma. So come back at 4:00 tonight, this afternoon, and hear from the fabulous Alan Eskens. You will not want to miss that. And thank you, Joe, in the back room. The giveaway winner is Jill Anderson, joining from Minnesota. I love you, Jill. She is marvelous. She is a Howard fan. Do you know Jill? She's great.
I think it's a Jill I know that I just saw at a conference recently. It's that you, Jill?
I love that. Small world. Totally small world.
Yeah, she's great.
Thank you so much for being here today, Sarah. I'll show it one more time. If you are not Jill Anderson, run and get your own copy of Gone Tonight. You will, and then tell us how you loved it, because I know you absolutely will. Sarah, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Hank. This is great. I absolutely loved it.
My pleasure. I love having you here. And you all, we love having you here as well. So stay tuned for 4 o'clock for Alan Eskins. Or if you can't, let me just tell you very, very quickly, next week, look at this, you all, at 3. We don't usually have 3 o'clock shows, but when there are so many wonderful authors, I just can't resist having them all here. So we all win. Next week at 3, look at this, Jillian McAllister. I know she's amazing. Just Another Missing Person. And at 4, Jess Lowry, The Taken Ones. So make sure you come next week at 3 and 4. We'll be giving away books, and we want you to win. And at 4 o'clock today, we'll have Alan Eskins. And until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you in 15 minutes or next week or at the bookstore. Talk to you soon.